out of town, so she won't be able to join us. So, Councilman Turner, since you're the MPO board chair, I'll let you chair this meeting. But this is an information meeting on the NCDOT Spot 6.0 project list, and I submitted the 3 projects to the City Council that appeared to score the best in that initial scoring. Then we want to talk about those, and then also get an update on the Catawba Crossings feasibility study. So we've asked Randy Gates from the Gaston Cleveland Lincoln MPO to come and present an update to us on those projects. So I'll turn it over to you, Randy.
So good afternoon, Mr. Seelinger. I think you're the only one maybe that doesn't know me. So I'm a local girl, graduated from South Point High School back a few years ago, but have born and raised in Gaston County, came back after college, and I'm the principal transportation planner for the MPO. So nice to meet you.
You too.
Okay, so we're going to just kind of dive into P6.0, and just for a kind of a general, I guess, description of what P6.0 is. So every approximately 2 years, NCDOT goes through a round of prioritization to fund projects, transportation projects, all modes: highway, bike ped, aviation, rail, ferry, public transportation, in a 10-year program that's called the State Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP. In the transportation planning world, we use a lot of acronyms. So prioritization, P6.0, that 10-year plan is the STIP. And so what we're currently working on, this current round of prioritization, will prioritize and fund projects for the years 2023 to 2032. So that 10-year program. And what we do at the MPO is we work with all of our local communities, so we cover 3 counties, and we work with the local communities and the counties and NCDOT to find out what the priorities are, and then we work to come up with test scores. So I cover highway projects, and I have staff that covers bike ped, aviation, public transportation, and I think we're going to be submitting one rail project for a project in Cramerton this go around. So what we're here to talk about today, what I wanted to focus on, is just the highway projects. We received about 140 projects from all of our communities over the 3 counties to test score, to see, how they could rank against one another within our 3 counties, as well as in the region. In the division, we're in Division 12, so our 3 counties are competing against an additional 3 counties. And then when we look out into the regional tier, we're competing, I believe, against 12 counties. So there's 4 divisions within the region. So we kind of look to see what potentially could get funded. So with that, we test scored approximately 140 projects. Some of those are duplicates because we were looking at how a project could be segmented, and I'll talk about that specifically for South Point Road. We're looking at what if we submitted the whole thing, what if we broke it into 3 segments, and we also, on a number of projects, looked at how it would score if, like, we were widening a 2-lane to a 3-lane facility, or from a 2-lane to a 4-lane divided facility, and kind of what those numbers would look like. So one of the handouts that you have, and I may just work off the paper and not try to mess with this unless we need to, but the spreadsheet that you see right here, and you all should have a copy of that, are the projects.
Are they all the same? Thanks.
So these are the projects that we specifically looked at for Belmont. And that was, again, from communication with your staff and also NCDOT to kind of figure out what the priority projects for Belmont are. So the spot ID is just a number that's assigned to each project that we look at. So every way that we submit it or test it, it has its own individual spot ID. Project category, there are 3 tiers for highway projects. There's a statewide mobility tier. Those are typically like your U.S. highways and interstates fall within that statewide mobility tier. The regional impact tier are NC routes typically, and then the division needs tier for highway is any secondary routes or even local streets that we're looking at. And then we look at the route from and to, add a description to it, and we have to select a specific improvement type. And it's a lot of data that goes into this online database that then kind of spits out all this information that we plug into a spreadsheet, and then it tells us what a draft score is. Now the draft scores that you see on this handout, those are based on primarily it's P6 criteria, but a lot of the weights don't get assigned until after statewide all the projects are submitted and they add weights. So what you're seeing is a draft score. It's the best that we have. We're comparing all projects equally, but the scores that actually come out will be slightly different. But again, this is the best information that we have at this time to compare projects. So with that, and this came directly from NCDOT, so just trying to figure out how, I think it's sorted by the regional impact score. But you can see how these projects are scoring. And we know that last year, the regional impact quantitative score, anything that scored 38 and higher was funded in the last round. And for the division needs score, projects that scored 30 and above, those were kind of like the cutoff statewide last year, or last time around for P5. We do know that this time around there's less funding, so we're not going to get as many projects funded, and that's because we're locking in the first 6 years of the current STIP instead of 5, and there was some big projects specifically in our area that luckily are getting locked in, which means they're funded, they don't have to be rescored, they're good to go, and that's I-85 widening is one of them. So I really fought to get that sixth year locked in so that we didn't have to have that project reprioritized. I-77 project in Charlotte was one too, so there's some major projects in our area that we were able to get locked in, but locking in 6 years means there's only really 4 years of available funding that we're working with. Project costs are going up, and so there's a lot of reasons why we just don't have as much money. So all of that, we can submit 26 new highway projects. We'll be lucky to get a handful of those projects funded. It is what it is this time around. But if we want to look down the list at projects, and we can kind of chat through those for Belmont. Your highest scoring project is a proposal to construct an interchange with Park Street or NC 273 and US 74. And that's something that we talked about months ago, maybe even last year when I came to one of these meetings to talk through projects, that it was kind of like a crazy idea. Hey, what if we looked at this interchange or intersection, because we know there's issues there. That's probably one of your most congested intersections in Belmont, probably one of our most congested intersections in Gaston County. What if we took that and not only looked at just a conventional improvement project, adding turn lanes, but what if we looked at doing a grade separated interchange? As we know that we're pushing for light rail to come into Gaston County, there would be a station somewhere past this. I mean, we've been told it's going to be in between exits 26 and 27. We know there's conversations ongoing. But thinking through, what if we separated the north-south movement, the east-west, and allowed for not only cars, vehicles to be able to navigate that intersection a little smoother, but also, you know, looking ahead to light rail, if we were able to remove that north-south traffic on NC 273, and that would allow for the light rail to be able to come through and not have as long of stops potentially as if we just did the conventional intersection improvements. That project scored really well, the draft score. So that's a regional tier project because it is an NC route and a US route. It is a regional tier. But out of 70, it is scoring a 47.47. So that wasn't our highest ranking project, but out of the 140 that we were test scoring, it was number 4. So, but we're really looking to you all to see, is that something, you know, because that's a drastic change for that intersection. Is that something that Belmont supports? One decision point is now, because we're looking at that as being one of our 26 projects that we can submit. And if we move ahead with it, there will be an additional decision point when the actual scores come out and we look to add local input points. So that's another chance for local support. But same time, we don't want to use a spot, one of our 26, if that's not something that Belmont is going to support. And that decision is going to need to be finalized in March. So this list of 26 will go to our TCC, that's our staff committee, and it will be recommended to our board at your January meeting to release for a 30-day public comment period. So those 26 projects will go out for public comment. We'll have 3 public meetings, 1 in each of our 3 counties. And then we will bring that information back to the TCC and the board at your March meetings. That March board meeting, I don't know the date right offhand, 4th Thursday, whatever date that is, that's where we need the final approval of the 26 to submit. So that's an ask that I have of your board is, are you supportive of us submitting this project as one of our 26?
I mean, personally, I know we've talked about it. I mean, conceptually, I like the project. I think, and Mark, I don't know if you can tell from the drawing, but correct me if I'm wrong.
And you might be able to see it better with the handout.
Because of the grade drop of Park Street, you're talking about elevating the road over Wilkinson.
Okay.
And then, of course, when the light rail comes, it'll be able to pass without stopping that flow of traffic. The new wrinkle, I mean, what wasn't discussed that I saw last time is this little kind of dog leg that you added here.
So, yeah, so they're considering this a quadrant interchange. So we submitted this as we were able to submit 10 intersection improvement projects for the congestion management team at NCDOT to look a little deeper of what like the time savings would be on some of these proposed projects. And so this is one that they looked at, and they were looking at where they could add that quadrant. And one of the designs came back, and it was in that southeast quadrant. And when we provided that to Belmont, that's where you got a proposed development coming in. So it was like, let's not do that, and let's look at this quadrant. We know that there may be future redevelopment potential of that quadrant, the northwest. So that's where they land. Now, that's not set in stone. If this project is one of the funded projects, then it would go into preliminary engineering, and they would be looking at all different, improvement possibilities. But this is what they're using in the internal scoring process right now.
All right, and this addition here is to allow the traffic that's going over the top to be able to access Wilkinson Boulevard.
That's correct.
Instead of a traditional cloverleaf type design.
Yeah, so if you're traveling north, like toward 85, and you wanted to take a left onto 74, you would go through or above the intersection, and then you would turn left onto that quadrant, come back down, and then be able to access 74 to like get into Gastonia. That's how that would work.
You know, at first I wasn't sure about this. I mean, these are just my own thoughts, but the more I thought about it, the more I liked it, because if this is where the station is going to be, then it gives the people who come to park here a lot better access, I guess. I mean, I don't know, I'm visualizing that might be, but it's going to make that land really highly desirable too, I think, for development, if that's what they want or we want.
And I think through the transit-oriented development study that we're going to be working on too, all of this is going to have to work together. So the Silver Line design and the TOD study and what we're working on, we're going to be coordinating all of that so that we all know, or well aware of kind of what each entity is proposing for different areas along that whole corridor. But again, this is just what they're using right now. This isn't the final design, but that's just the information that they're going off of right now.
So I guess the idea would be to kind of, or potentially put the station where that shopping center is right now?
I think when the initial talk that I heard was that is the approximate area where they would want it. I don't think it was ever nailed down, but is that what you heard?
Yeah, there's no identified specific location, but this is the general area.
Right.
And they like somewhere in that Montcross Shopping Center because of the proximity to the interchanges on 85, plus the availability of land for parking or parking structure.
Well, I mean, for people, if the goal is to get people to come here, park their cars and get off the roads and go into Charlotte, then, I mean, that's a good spot because there is a lot of parking space there, so. I mean, I don't know, I like this project because I think it solves some problems and meets some needs for parking. You know, when you were talking about light rail and it was coming up this far, I was like, that's going to interrupt that flow of traffic a lot. Well, I mean, I don't know a lot, but at certain times of the day it would be really inconvenient.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that elevated roadway seems to resolve. I mean, what are your thoughts on it? What are your thoughts?
So this is the intersection of the two. We had the highest traffic counts at this intersection of anywhere in town. And actually more traffic on Park Street than we do on Wilkinson. Wilkinson's catching up, but it's still the highest traffic counts. And this is a bottleneck. I mean, if you drive it, particularly in the afternoons, yeah, it's a bottleneck. It's a mess. I mean, and we've asked DOT for, and I think we actually had a funded project for improvements to this intersection as a conventional.
That's correct.
Add additional turn lanes.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. There is a currently funded project just to add.
But it's adding turn lanes, and in our experience with Main Street or Michigan left. So they'll probably do a Michigan left treatment to it. And so, and I said Michigan left, so you didn't have to.
Thanks.
And so, I think that this more urban interchange is a better solution than just a conventional, let's add some turn lanes or let's do a Michigan left on it. Because the traffic won't stop. You have free-flowing traffic on Park Street, which will help all the way down the system.
So would you even have a traffic light at that intersection at all? Or would it just be completely?
It would just depend on if it's fully, I mean, what we submitted was a grade separation. I don't know. I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm not even going to pretend to answer what that may look like.
If we go ahead with this project, say we want to do this, the funded project with the Michigan left, does that go off the board because it's no longer necessary? And if so, where does that funding go to?
It would they're not going to, I don't think they're going to do anything and then come right back around. But I guess it depends on the timing of the two as well. So I can't, I mean, that's a DOT call that they, I mean, I've seen before when a new project is funded, they look and they either delete a project or they work to combine the funding. Like that funding would just kind of
roll into this project?
Yeah. So,
Wasn't that intersection funded prior to the closing of 85 for the widening? The 84 Park Street?
give me a second.
For some reason I thought it
I was thinking all of our Wilkinson projects were
Yes,
were funded prior to
So,
85 widening.
yeah, part of the, trying to get it done prior to 85 widening. Something has to be done there.
Yes.
Okay, that project is funded actually for right-of-way and utilities to begin this fiscal year,
Yeah?
with construction in '21.
But if the long-range goal is to do this, does that, is that then necessary? I mean, are we going to be throwing money down a rabbit hole if we go ahead and move forward with that Michigan left, knowing that we're going to ultimately do this?
Again, I don't know if they would construct the interim improvements or the Michigan left, or, I don't know if they would move ahead with that project if we were able to get something larger funded. But that would be a call, that would be a DOT call.
But if the, let's say the interchange is funded, but it's funded for 2032,
Yeah.
we're stuck with what we have for the next,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
13 years. So I would push to have something done in the interim,
Yeah.
whether it's the full Michigan left treatment or some other interim solution.
Yeah, and I think there's time to kind of work through all of that, because we won't even know if these projects are funded until, like, the final draft step for this won't come out till like February of 2022 is the timeline.
Okay.
I mean, we would know scores and we would have a good feeling for what would be funded, but we won't know for certain until,
So then keep what we have until everything shakes out.
yeah. I can get a better, let's see. We would know by the end of July 2021 what projects at the regional tier are programmed, but the draft STIP won't come out until February of 2022. So we would have an idea, and we could be working with NCDOT to figure out how the two projects either work together or you delete one project, or how that's going to work.
All right, so you need from us to tell you whether to submit this?
Yeah, it'd be good to have just the green light from Belmont, that there is support for us to submit this. And like I said, this is just kind of step one. There will be other decision points down the line, but this is the first big one, because I really don't want to submit it if there's not support locally.
And I would say procedurally, I'd like for the Transportation Committee to make a recommendation to the full council for support. And it sounds like we've got time. If all the MPO board is going to be asked to do in January is just to release this universe of projects for public comment.
Yeah, it would be the list of 26.
26.
But the final, like, submittal into the DOT database won't happen until after the meeting in March.
Okay, so we can bring it to council at the February council meeting.
Okay, so what do you need from us?
Yeah,
You need a
and
form of a motion?
Well, why don't we go through all the projects and then have a motion for recommendation from the Transportation Committee to the full council.
Okay.
The second project, if you're looking at the handouts of the maps, is a project to improve the intersection of NC 273 Park Street and NC 7 Catawba Street. So looking at adding left turn lanes in all directions, as well as a right turn lane on NC 273 to Catawba Street. So that one is scoring well enough in our overall, all of our projects to be submitted as one of the 26.
And did that include crosswalks and pedestrian improvements?
It will. All of our intersection improvement projects, we include bike ped in that. It's just, it's
'Cause that's been a
it's
key-
a checkbox that we have to do.
Identified goal of our Main Street program in
Yeah.
the city for many years.
Yeah, so any intersection improvement projects like that, we automatically say include bike ped.
Thank you.
Any questions on that particular project? Okay.
Well, hang on one sec. Is this, okay, I'm looking here at Watson Insurance, and I know,
We have a donation towards towards that improvement too. I don't know if that was shared for the scoring. We had a project approved where they did $100,000.
$100,000.
Donations towards the right turn lane.
Who gave us that donation?
That's part of the Chronicle Mill rezoning.
So there would be a public-private partnership or public-public partnership.
All right, but
DOT money.
we're still going to be taking land from them to put in this turn lane?
So I did not know about the 100,000, so we can add that into the test scoring. It would help the score, so.
Yeah, it looks like there's going to be, I mean, just from the look of this diagram, the new configuration of the roadway is not going to fit within the current right-of-way. So it looks like there's going to be some right-of-way acquisition necessary for this project.
Okay, so,
You're essentially adding 5 turn lanes.
okay, the reason I'm asking, I know the Chronicle project had been trying to work with them to get their land to put in a turn lane because the TIA said that turn lane was required for the Chronicle to move forward. And they were unwilling to sell that land, so that TIA portion stalled. So, is this just another way of us accomplishing what the Chronicle wanted us to do in a roundabout way?
So we've got 2 separate processes.
Because I'm somewhat concerned about taking their land.
Yeah, so we're not taking anybody's land. DOT has the authority of eminent domain for transportation purposes, and so, you know, do it all the time.
Sure.
Private developers do not have that authority. So when we did the TIA for the Chronicle, it identified the right turn lane there on northbound Park Street onto eastbound Catawba Street. The developer, property owners don't have the authority of eminent domain, so they just have to negotiate back and forth. And they had an unwilling property owner that wants an insurance, so no, we're not going to sell our property. So at that point, the city council has a decision. Do we kill this project of the Chronicle Mill because we can't get this turn lane? Or do we go forward with it and we work on making improvements to this intersection through NCDOT through the normal channels, which we've been doing for the last several years? And so if this is a funded project from NCDOT, then it's a bigger picture makeover of this intersection of Park Street and Catawba Street, and has nothing to do with the Chronicle Mill. They just happen to be located in the same thing. So this is, you know, of the several different turn lanes that are proposed in here, one of them is that right turn lane. So it would accomplish what the TIA says needs to happen, but it also accomplishes a lot more.
Randy, that right turn lane, I mean, as far as this project goes, is a necessary part of this?
I mean, that's how we had scoped it, looking at the turning movements at that intersection, that we felt it was necessary, just looking at traffic counts. So that's how we scoped it. If we pulled that additional right turn out, it would certainly affect the score. And it may drop it to where it wouldn't be high enough on our list to submit.
If your concern is that we shouldn't have, the DOT shouldn't either purchase property from property owners to have their transportation projects, or if they're not able to negotiate, use their authority for eminent domain to do these projects, then we're going to be limited in the number of transportation projects that we're going to request.
Yeah, I mean, I understand how the process works. It's just, you know, just to, you know, think out loud, I don't want people to look at this and say, you know, they couldn't get the land through regular negotiations to move forward with the Chronicle because the TIA said it had to happen. So what we're doing is we're finding a way to accomplish the same goal just in another way. I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and we during the rezoning, we talked about the fact that we had already identified this as a project.
Okay.
We were requesting NCDOT to fund it, and we were hoping that this project would score well enough to fund an overall improvement, not just adding one turn lane or one section.
Yeah, and I guess in my view, we weren't thinking about this improvement project anything to do with the Chronicle Mill site. This is a needed project with or without
Right.
development.
Okay. Now, the $100,000 local matching funds, is that gonna, if you weren't aware of it, when you score it again, does that move up?
It
Does it
could-
move the needle at all?
It could.
Could.
I'm not gonna say it will, it could. We'll have to go back in and add that and see, just see
Okay.
how it affects the score.
Because I think we've identified this intersection for improvements now for the past couple.
I'm sure it's been on our
Yes.
list for a while.
I don't know how far back, so.
Yeah.
And I think even during the rezoning, we said DOT's already considering this, just the timelines don't match up between the rezoning hearing and the Spot 6.0 process.
Right.
Are you also having, it looks like that's a left turn lane coming off Catawba onto Park? Is that, I'm just going off memory here from the Chronicle, because I remember that was one of the options on the TIA. And I remember something about that one not being workable, which is why we're looking at that right turn lane through Watson. So is that, I just want to make sure I'm reading the map correctly. So there is a left turn lane.
On both approaches of Catawba onto Park. And yes, so the TIA said that turn lanes, actually, at all four sections of that intersection are needed. But because of the right-of-way that would be needed to do the turn lanes on, and the constraints on, with the utilities for left turn lanes on Catawba turning onto Park Street, they could accomplish the same traffic flow improvements by doing the right turn lane over here, because it freed up enough timing on the light, or the signal rather.
So if we have those lefts coming in from both directions, would we even still need that right through Watson, or is that something I guess we need to?
It's probably something that the engineers would determine.
Yeah, that's the one that's coming from this one? Yes. I mean, I think, because the traffic counts and the turning movements were showing so many cars going down 7 to get onto US 74 and into Charlotte.
Right.
So if you've got that more free flow,
It looks like you're
Turning right.
heading northbound on Park Street. You go from 2 lanes up to 4, and one of those is a dedicated left turn lane to turn left onto Catawba Street to go downtown. 2 through movements, and then 1 right turn lane.
that's right. That's correct. Yeah.
What are the pedestrian improvements gonna look like to get people across? I mean, were we looking at islands, or?
So I believe when you have 5 or more lanes, I believe that DOT requires a refuge island.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're adding distance to walk, and it's already pretty scary.
So you would have ped heads, and then where it's, it's either 5 or greater than 5, and you would have that pedestrian refuge island.
And I guess crosswalks.
Yes, high visibility crosswalks.
Well, I know at South Point High School with the kids, it was a problem getting them across the street, and we pushed and got the pylons that you can push to get the signals. Will that be included in the traffic improvements here?
Yeah, we'll can look at all that as part of the if it's funded, preliminary engineering, but yeah, that's pretty standard now when you're
It is.
doing any improvements, bike ped improvements, is those ped heads, push buttons, high visibility crosswalks.
Okay.
Any other questions on this one? Okay. We'll just continue to move through, and I don't have maps of everything because there's some that aren't scoring well enough for us to submit, so we just focused on mapping the ones that could potentially get submitted or that we knew were priority projects.
What do you think is sort of the cutoff score that we need to be looking at?
Well,
So the sums of the
So,
21 or
like,
26 is not even really.
but like 30 for the regional tier projects, right now I've identified 33.87 as like the lowest scoring project, but then there's one that I'll talk about that I think is important. It's important, and it's also important politically for us to submit. It wouldn't necessarily score well enough, but I think it's one that we should submit. So there's kind of some movement around. Also, I'm meeting with NCDOT Division 12 tomorrow to see what projects they may be submitting, because they can submit 14 throughout the whole division. But we were successful last go-around with working with them to say, well, if you can submit this project for me, then it frees up a slot for me to submit this, because, we try to be mindful of, submitting projects throughout our 3 counties. Now, Gaston County always has the most because it's, it's more urban, there's more people, more congestion, so those projects just score better, but we try to make sure, we try to make sure that, we're looking at Lincoln County and Cleveland County too, to make sure. So, working with DOT, they can sometimes submit some projects for us that, again, frees up some slots for other projects. And again, out of 26 projects, we may get a handful. So, it's kind of playing a game towards the end of the list to politically, so that's kind of what we look at. But yeah, I can kind of talk through that a little more as we get down the list. The next project, the map that we have, and going down the spreadsheet to improve the intersection of South Central and Keener. That division, that's a division tier project. It's not a regional tier because they're secondary routes. So with that score of 28.43, that's not currently scoring well enough for us to submit that one.
Is this, Adrian, this looks familiar to me. Was this part of the school?
This was recommended with the Belmont Middle School TIA.
But this is if my memory serves, our TIA was going to apply to Gaston County schools, and then the legislature said it would not.
Right.
Okay.
So we do not have the authority to require schools to make traffic improvements, except for safety issues at the driveway, unless we wanted to pay for it.
But we did at one time. They revamped
Yes.
the law while we were in negotiation, or just after we came out.
Yes, after we had worked with the county to secure the location for the school.
We have to be sure to thank our representatives for that.
Yes, yes. Then DOT, the General Assembly changed the rules.
So this project wouldn't be a big enough one that you'd want DOT to submit it, or?
Well, I'm going to be having those discussions.
Okay.
If enough projects are submitted, it frees up slots. So, in the looking at the grand scheme of things, this project currently, when we sort the scores, it's ranking number 32.
32, and we only get to submit 26.
That's right.
Right, 32.
And, because the lower quantitative score, even if we submit it, I can almost guarantee it's not going to get funded.
Okay.
Right.
So,
It's basically $1.5 million, this project. What kind of money would you need to bump that up?
when I haven't gotten the tool from DOT yet to play around with kind of those local match numbers, but I remember we looked at one last time around. I'm trying to remember what project that was, where you had, I want to say you had $75,000 or something.
At the intersection of Wilkinson and Catawba Street.
Okay, so I was putting in that to see how much it changed the score. The score didn't really change until I bumped that local contribution up to $1 million.
But on a project.
That's a big project too, though, right? I'm sure.
So I won't know until later kind of what that could look like, but I don't think it would bump up the number enough to get funded, regardless of how much that local match is, because all the other factors, it's scoring just lower.
I guess what I'm driving at, this is a bad intersection, and it's going to get worse with the school. As a city, do we ever consider using some of our monies to match or bump up something like this, or could we?
We have not done it in the past, but we certainly could.
Okay. Because, that's going to be, in the mornings, in the afternoons for me, that's always a big problem area there. I think we identified it with the school, the TIA, as this is going to be bad again, so.
Is there any way to know, what's holding the score down? I guess I'm kind of surprised that it didn't score better.
I could look into it. So we have a corridor development engineer who is a traffic engineer with NCDOT. And he helped us score, and he knows kind of the background and what it would take, or what's pulling down a score. He could not meet today, is why he's not here, but I could certainly ask him and see if he can kind of get into the data and figure out why it's not scoring as high. But I mean, it's scoring higher. When you look at 140 projects and it's scoring 33rd, I mean, it's scoring decent, just we're limited to how many we can submit.
Yeah, I just know anecdotally that's.
Yeah. Unfortunately, intersections have to get really, really bad before they qualify for funding.
So wait till after the school starts.
Yes.
and
Yeah.
Right, because right now.
So we're bad, we're just not bad enough.
We're not bad enough, yeah.
Right now, the congestion scores and everything is based off of current volumes.
Okay, so you didn't take
Okay.
information out of the TIA for the school or something like that?
No, it's looking at what the issues right now.
Well, that makes a little bit more sense.
So next time around, the school is
But it's going
opening
pretty
for,
well with
2021.
the school.
Yeah.
then by P7, it will be
Yeah.
up and running, and
Yep.
the scores might look quite different at that point, so. All right, any other questions on that one?
But to your question, I mean, in the past, we've just worked within the existing MPO system and DOT system. We have not spent city money to improve intersections at state roads or to improve state roads. We can do that. I mean, and Gastonia has done that on a lot of
they
projects
did
to
on,
kind of get ahead of things.
There was
With
bond, there was a
bond money.
bond,
Yeah.
and so they put,
Yeah, we don't have the money to do that. We'd have to do some sort of bond and figure out
Myrtle School Road, right, was one? Okay.
New Hope Road, I
Yeah.
think, over there.
Tittman
Garrison.
Road,
Tittman Road.
Union Road, Hudson. There's another one.
New Hope at Garrison,
I don't know
near
about
that area.
that one. There's one that was like, Davis Park Road turns into,
Myrtle School.
yes, Myrtle School Road was the other one.
And that's something we could, you could talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be
If we want to-
opposed to at least looking at that, especially for something like this where we know, like, it's already bad. And
It's only gonna
gonna
get worse.
a lot worse, so, but,
Well, I mean, I know we've got limited finances too, but, I mean, we do give away certain amounts of money as a city to various projects. We can't help but think right now, I mean, we're also gonna, be offering economic incentives, which, if we didn't offer them, might be the money we need to go ahead and fund this. So I think maybe a conversation about needs, wants, and desires and how do we get there.
So I can say
Might be
too,
practical.
yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
there is current law, I guess through STI, is if a local community puts in money toward a project through this process that gets funded, that it's called a bonus allocation. So you would get 50% of the money that you've put into a project back out to put toward another project. An example of that, so Gastonia gave $5 million for the Union Road widening project, and it's programmed in the STIP and it has a local contribution of $5 million. Once that project, I believe the timeline is the project has to be like within the year of its being constructed, NCDOT will then release back $2.5 million for Gastonia to select another project to, so it's like you're getting something out of that local contribution.
But you have to reinvest that money
You have
back
to-
into another transportation project.
That's right. That's right. And
So if
there-
we put in $1 million, just for the sake of argument, we get $500,000 back to invest in another transportation project?
That's right.
Okay.
That's current law, I guess. That's either within the STI law or maybe the FAST Act, I'm not really sure.
That's pretty attractive
But
incentive.
that's what the
Yeah.
law is now. Now, could that change in the future? Yes, but that is the law right now.
But once you committed, you're kind of locked in, they can't take it away from you.
You'd be
That's right.
you'd be grandfathered if you did it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
even if they changed the law. Huh, okay.
The next projects that we looked at were along South Point Road, the widening of South Point Road. So we looked at widening it in various segments, and we also looked at widening it to a 4-lane boulevard. We know with the traffic counts out there, a 3-lane does not add capacity, and this roadway needs capacity. So a 4-lane divided is what we were scoring. You
So
can,
just say that again, the 3-lane section of South Point Road doesn't do
it
it.
doesn't add capacity. I mean, it
So it
adds
has to
that
be 4
turn
lanes.
lane, but it's not adding capacity.
Yeah.
The 3 lanes just with the suicide lane.
That's right. It's adding that turn lane.
With a turn lane.
It's introducing additional conflict
Conflicts,
points,
right.
and, I mean, with the congestion, with the volume that's out there, and then what's to
All
come,
the neighborhood.
you have to, I mean, that 4-lane divided
And it
is,
needs to be divided, it can't just be 4 lanes within.
no, they don't
4 narrow lanes.
typically do that anymore. DOT does not construct that particular cross-section.
Because one left turn
That
shuts down that
That's
whole
right.
lane.
That's right.
And there's safety conflict issues.
That's right. So we were looking at everything as a 4-lane boulevard with a median of some type. And more like an access management too of where those left turns were gonna be allowed. So looking at how it was segmented, we scored the project in a variety of ways. Once you get past Henry Chapel, I mean, we looked at a project that took the widening all the way down to Armstrong Road. The length of those projects and the cost of those projects, the amount of right-of-way that would have to be acquired, it was dropping the score pretty substantially. So, again, we looked at it, but what we wanted to look at a little more was the segment from R.L. Stowe to Henry Chapel. And we looked at it, you know, Henry Chapel to Bellwood, and then, I think that's wrong. We looked at it from R.L. Stowe to Henry Chapel. We looked at it stopping at Bellwood. We looked at it then from Bellwood down to Henry Chapel. And what is scoring the best, and what we heard from our meeting before Christmas with Belmont staff, is that the priority is this 184813, because the score is so close. Looking at the full segment compared to just a shorter segment, the score is so close that we might as well submit the segment from Henry Chapel to R.L. Stowe. So that one is scoring well enough to be in our top 26. I was talking to Dean Ledbetter, he's our corridor design engineer, actually on the way here, because there's a discrepancy in the data that kind of comes out of the Spot Online tool, and it's showing that the current speed limit along that section of roadway is 55. And so when we were showing it as a 4-lane divided with a lower speed limit, that was impacting the score. So when he went in the back end to fix that speed limit, it bumped the score up to 35.65. So it went from 34.12 to 35.65. So that one is scoring well enough. We plan to submit that. And actually, I think that may have been one. That was one that was like at the bottom of the list. And I bumped it ahead of some other projects because I felt that's important enough. We see the need, and politically, we need to be submitting that project. So I think that was one, there were a few projects that were actually ahead of it, but the importance of that one, we felt needed to be submitted.
And you're talking about 184813?
Yes.
Is there, I know the traffic circle down at Lower Armstrong and South Point
Yeah.
is going to be rescored.
That has to be rescored, but it does
Rescored.
not count toward our 26.
It doesn't.
It automatically, because it's already in the STIP, so it's a carryover project.
Then there's no, Did NCDOT put that one in for us last time?
Yeah.
I think they did. Okay, it's going to be rescored. I just wanted to see if
Yeah.
we couldn't keep that in there, because although we're still fixing up here.
Yes.
We still have a major problem
Yeah,
down here.
that will-
But it doesn't score as well.
Yep, that will automatically be resubmitted. We don't have to do
Okay.
anything with that, it just automatically goes back in.
That was funded for like
2029.
29, yeah.
Yeah, it's at the very tail end of the current step, so it's within that last 4 years, and that's why it has to be.
Was that a real expensive project, the traffic circle?
That one's showing up as 2.2 million. So looking at doing that as a roundabout.
Although it's needed, the surrounding properties are actually in the unincorporated area of the county.
Right.
So if we were trying to do a geo bond or anything, we couldn't apply it to that.
We need the county to do it.
We would need the county to do it, yes.
Now, we have asked the Division 12 staff to look at just doing a three-way stop at that intersection, just so people can take turns to help with traffic flow. And I haven't heard back from them on that.
I think one other thing that they're looking at is the potential to make 273 the
Stop.
through, to not have to
Yeah,
stop.
right.
And then so anyone coming,
That's South Point.
yeah, down, they would have to stop.
Yeah.
But anything going along 273 would have the free.
Well, that'll be brutal though, if people trying to get to work from Reflection Point and all those other places or back home. So I guess the through would be kind of a loop.
It's a lot, it's a,
The
it's,
other direction.
yeah, it's a lot
Yeah, I
more
know.
people than what's current.
There's no good solution there.
So again, yeah, they're looking at that outside of this process.
Okay.
To
An
at
interim
least do
solution,
something,
yeah.
yep, in the interim.
For the next 10 years.
So, I mean, DOT doesn't move very quickly. Okay, so if we go down to the next one after 184813, which again, I'm proposing to submit as one of our 26, we get down to the Belmont Mount Holly Loop segment from 273 to Armstrong Ford Road.
When you say loop, are you talking about the Belmont Mount Holly connector? Or is that something
Yes, yeah, it's in our long-range plans as the...
to the Pittenger property, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, it's in our long-range plans as the Belmont Mount Holly Loop.
okay. I'm just used to different language, I guess. So I've always heard it as a connector.
So, we looked at that one just from Armstrong Ford back down to 273, to see how that could potentially score. Right now, I mean, it's a very expensive project, $58.3 million. It's not scoring well enough to get funded. So that's not currently one of our 26, but we've been kind of thinking through the idea of if DOT can submit one of our 26 and it frees up a slot, potentially submitting that project all the way up to Mount Holly and back down. We know it's not gonna get funded anyway. It's just not scoring well enough, even this bottom portion. But what if we submitted the whole project, and then once projects are submitted, DOT can start working on more like detailed refinements, express feasibility studies. They can just be kind of looking at it in a little more detail to get us more ready maybe for the next time. So as we're talking about these different corridor studies that we can't fund right now, we're trying to think through ways that maybe we can still get some work done.
That'd be great.
So that's one that we're talking about right now. I don't think DOT would submit it because they're looking at projects that are gonna score well. But again, if they free up one of our submittal slots, we will certainly be looking at potentially submitting that. And one thing too that we're thinking of in the future, is not ready for P 6.0, but maybe P 7, is if we can get DOT to start looking at this, then what if we were able to submit this project? Because right now it's just a division needs project. It's not an NC route. But what if this becomes an NC 273 alternate? Or what if the number shifts from South Point Road over to this new facility, and we're able to submit it for the regional tier. So those are things that we're going to be looking at.
Well, let me ask you, are you familiar with this Belmont Mount Holly connector?
The general idea.
Was it first submitted in the early 90s under the Peninsula study, and it's gotten traction and lost traction since then, but I like this project because it's on the thoroughfare plan, the CIP or CTP.
Yeah, Comprehensive Transportation Plan.
For
Again,
long
an
range, so
acronym.
it's a committed design for a roadway through the Pittenger property, a 4-lane thoroughfare. South Point Road needs to be widened, but when I look at it, like you're talking about, there's so much right-of-way acquisition and disruption. And just moving the utilities alone is going to be on the city of Belmont. It's going to be millions of dollars to relocate those, is my understanding, because of where they're located. So, there's some problems with widening South Point Road, and while you say that, $58 million is a lot, the ultimate widening of South Point Road with the relocation of utilities is going to exceed that. The reason I like this project now is the Pittenger property is pristine land. There's no right-of-way acquisition. You just cut the road and you go. And I don't know, layman, not an engineer, but I'm like, okay, if I've got to disrupt all these people's lives, acquire their property, possibly end up in court fights over the acquisition of land, which is going to stretch the process out and expand the cost even further, why aren't we taking a real hard look at this? Because, we need a parallel road along the peninsula. Just for safety reasons, I think. I don't know, is there any way to get more eyes on this or more lift? What can we do? Because, I don't know. I'm speculating. You tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it would be easier to cut a brand-new road through land that doesn't have houses on it.
It's still right-of-way acquisition. It's just right-of-way acquisition for undeveloped land.
Yeah. So we're looking at the potential to get more eyes on this is to submit it, knowing that it's not going to get funded.
Okay.
But it gets eyes on it.
Yeah.
So we're exploring that option a little more. Right now, it's not one of our 26, but as I have discussions with DOT tomorrow, we're also going to be contacting the spot office to see what we need to do and getting confirmation that if it is submitted and doesn't get funded, that they will be looking at it in more detail. So those are yet to be determined factors, but we are looking at it.
From where I sit, how the rest of you feel, I would like for you to try what you can to get that on there, because once it's on there, it's going to garner more attention. People say, what's this, So hopefully we can get that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. At least from what I'm seeing, with all the stuff that's already on South Point Road, someone who doesn't build roads for a living, it would seem like it would be easier to just kind of cut it through something where there's nothing, or at least kind of start that process before, somebody takes an interest in that property and wants to put in a whole bunch of houses or whatever.
Have we got a committed route for this? Because at some point, they're going to start developing this in segments, but,
So, yeah.
do we need to lock down a route so they build around it and not on it? So then we have to start going around and making...
Yeah, so we do have a functional design for this that was completed a few years ago. It has been approved by NCDOT though, so it is a more detailed parcel by parcel route for this potential roadway. And as it goes through the Pittenger property, we've already had discussions with potential developers of the proposed roadway. And we would be following your ordinance on having them, I think your ordinance is for them to reserve the right-of-way.
Dedicate, or we try to get them to dedicate and build
Build it.
sections if they're taking access from it, they need to build it.
So that's the tools that we have to
But if I'm the
reserve that
developer right
right-of-way.
now, if I were to start building tomorrow, if I'm the developer, do I know, okay, I can't build here because there's a road here?
And we've
There's a road
already
here?
given them all that
Yeah,
information. We've been working with
We've
them.
already coordinated all of
Yeah,
that.
it's in our plan, it's in the CTP plan.
Okay.
And so we
In the
send
small area plan.
any interested party directly to NCDOT and the TCC.
Yeah, we've been working through that, so.
Okay.
All right, if we keep on going down the list, we've pretty much covered all the maps. So projects that don't meet the score criteria for submittal, but, you know, we heard from Belmont that they are important projects, so we did test score them. But if you're looking at H184811, that was a section, you know, of South Point Road widening that is being taken care of with the other project that is on our submittal list. This U6150 that shows carryover, again, that's the roundabout at South Point Road and Armstrong Road where it does have to be reprioritized, but it's carryover, it doesn't count toward one of our 26. The next two are South Point Road widening projects that are further down all the way to Armstrong Road, so you can see just the lower scores of those. We also were asked to look at the widening of Woodlawn from Belmont, Mount Holly to School Street. So we looked at that as just constructing a 2-lane boulevard versus a 3-lane. And so you can see kind of those scores, that's a division need. So again, we know last year you had to have a score of 30 or higher. This year it's going to be even greater, I feel. So those are not making the cut. We had a section, I think this next one, H184946, that is a segment of the Belmont Mount Holly Loop to construct a new 4-lane roadway. So again, we were looking at it at kind of various segmenting, but thinking if we are going to use a submittal slot, we know that it's not going to get funded anyway. We're going to throw the whole thing in there potentially. We also looked at Woodlawn to widen to a 4-lane and realign that intersection, so you can see the scores there, as well as the Hazeline Avenue, the new, you know, kind of looping around and having a direct access to US 74, and that's just scoring really low. That's one project that we think would have a big impact, and we've looked at every round of prioritization, it just doesn't score well.
Let me ask you that, God, I'm having trouble seeing right now for some reason. 4629 Woodlawn Road, the widening to 4 lanes. Was that something also identified in the TIA for River West?
Not widening that. That was something that we talked about. The Woodlawn needs to be looked at
Okay.
comprehensively. The TIA for the River West identified a few improvements to Woodlawn, but it's mainly turn lanes and some intersection improvements.
Okay. I was just asking, 'cause I mean, if we had overlap that we didn't need.
Right.
One other project that isn't, I guess, directly in Belmont, but has an impact is, you know, we had heard and we know there's an issue and we wanted to look at widening. So funded project right now on South New Hope Road, from Tittman Road in Gastonia is funded all the way down to Union New Hope, which I guess goes through a section of Gaston County and then Cramerton. But as we're working on Catawba Crossings project, we've heard, you know, why are we gonna dump traffic onto a 2-lane road? We know that could be an issue, and we wanted to look at continuing the widening to a 4-lane divided from Union Road all the way down to the state line. Unfortunately, if we just ranked the projects, it doesn't score well enough to be one of our top 26, but I think politically that's a project that we really need to submit. So that one right now I have identified as one of our 26, but I'll be talking to NCDOT tomorrow about could they potentially submit it, or, you know, we're shifting some things around, but right now I've kind of bumped it ahead of a lower scoring project in Mount Holly, which they might not be too happy about, but.
So New Hope Road is 4 lanes in Gastonia for the most part, the developed portion of Gastonia. It's being widened to 4 lanes to Union New Hope Road.
That's correct, 4-lane divided.
And then it's 2 lanes in that county section, all the way down to the state line.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then your county is widening it, it's called Pole Branch Road there, they're
That's
widening it to what, 4 lanes?
3.
3 lanes. So,
It would need to be widened again on their side. And the bridge is actually in North Carolina. You don't hit South Carolina until after you cross over the bridge, so.
if we do nothing, you're gonna have 3-lane road in South Carolina going down to a 2-lane road and bridge in
So
North Carolina.
bottleneck, yeah.
And then dispersing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely think you need to have a new
Yeah.
road
Yeah.
in there.
So even though it's not scoring well enough right now to be one of our 26, I think it really needs to be one of the 26. So when we're looking down at the bottom of the list anyway, we know those projects aren't gonna get funded. So then then we start thinking politically and making sure we've got full coverage of things. And that's definitely a regional project. It's a need. We know as we're working on Catawba crossings, and then we've got the funded project, that it's going to continue to be a need, if not more of a need in the future. And so that's one that I will certainly be advocating that we submit as one of our 26, even though it doesn't score in the top 26 right now. And the same was with the South Point Road. I bumped that one up because I feel that that's extremely important. And if we can do anything with the Belmont Mount Holly Loop. Those were projects, again, that weren't really scoring in the top 26, but definitely need to be, I think, submitted.
Look, let me ask you a question. This roundabout, 2029, there's going to be a lot of pain for people on the peninsula between now and 2029 with that intersection as it stands. And you're saying it's in unincorporated area of the county.
Yeah, you're talking about Lower Armstrong and South Point.
So we would need the county to step up, meaning our county commissioners. Just thinking out loud, you've got a project there at 2.2 million. What if we were to consider some matching funds with that, but reach out to the county as well on that, and figure out what kind of number we might need to move that project up? If we could get some lift on that, and the reason why hearing about this state law makes, matching funds more attractive to me, because whatever we would put toward that roundabout, we would get half back and then potentially be able to use it at Central Avenue and Keener to add those turn lanes. Do you think could we approach the county on that?
I would be more comfortable with the county doing that. I don't, first of all, I'll need to verify that we can spend city money outside the city. I don't think we can do that.
That's a problem.
And even if we could, I would prefer that we spend city money inside the city.
All right.
But certainly we need to reach out to the county.
Well, let's reach out to the county then. Because they serve different districts. They're all elected at large. There's a lot of constituents out here that are having a real headache every day of the week, every morning and every afternoon. 2029 is, to me, it's unreasonable the way the peninsula is growing. So, maybe we need to figure out a way to put some pressure on the county to look, eastward a little bit and help us out, because that's a problem. And this intersection at Keener and Central is going to become a problem. And I don't know that we can wait till a school opens and it just becomes critical mass. Maybe we need to think about being proactive on that, if we can.
So I can reach out to NCDOT, the SPOT office, which is the prioritization office, to see if they have the tool ready and if they could look for me of how much local match would be needed to really bump that score up. And then we would at least know, is it $500,000? Is it $1 million? What does that number look like to move that score at all? It may be a moot point. So, but I can ask that.
So we can approach Commissioner Worley and...
I'd remind him, just recent memory, we did give you $400,000 to get this school built, All right, so what do you need from us right now, Randy?
I think just guidance. So right now, we're looking at submitting Wilkinson and Park, that interchange,
218?
218,
Okay.
184210, the intersection improvements of 273 and 7. We are proposing to submit H184813, that's the South Point Road widening from R.L. Stowe to Henry Chapel. So those would be the 3 new projects. Carryover, again, it's automatically going to be resubmitted, so I don't need to worry about that one. So if you're good with those 3 projects that are scoring well enough right now on our 26, and again, the South Point Road one is kind of picked up and bumped up. But that's what at least I'm proposing.
And then also adding in the Belmont Mount Holly Loop and the South New Hope Road widening.
Yes, and those are conversations, again, that we're gonna be having, but, yeah.
That we would
Any
support
support, if you would
those.
support that, I think that would be good to have on record as well. Would help me out a little bit.
Yeah, those top 3 that she listed are ones that appear to score well enough that have a good shot at getting funded, so we definitely want to keep those. But then the other 2, for the sake of just advancing those projects.
Okay, so it's 218, 813, and 210? Okay.
Yes.
So do we need this in the form of a motion?
Yes, sir.
Can the chair make that motion, or can you?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
He's not opposed. Motion passes.
Thank you.
So then the timeline, if you're gonna be talking about this at your February meeting, we will go ahead and have it on the draft list of 26 to go out for public comment. And then if we need to make any changes prior to the final approval by the MPO board, March, we would have that time
Okay.
to do that. And you can also see what public comments you're gonna get to.
Right.
We've had before a situation in Mount Holly, actually widening NC 273 further into the more residential area where it scored really well. But public comments, we got nothing but negative comments, multiple negative comments. We didn't get a single positive comment, and Belmont said, or Mount Holly said, let's pull that from the submittal list. Let's don't do it. We'll look at it later. So that gives you an opportunity to look at what the community feels about the projects too.
Let me ask you, the Belmont Mount Holly Loop, within what you've outlined here, does it dump out onto 85?
No.
The reason I asked, Joe Carpenter, when he was chairing the board, had worked with DOT, and the engineers had found that there was exactly the right amount of distance between the 2 Belmont exits
Yeah,
to
we had-
add an additional exit ramp, which would be ideal if that traffic coming from South Carolina, which would be the goal, I guess, for them to use this road, had a direct access to I-85.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if our CTP shows a proposed interchange there.
Because if
It's
we,
certainly something that we could look at. I looked at submitting that in P5 as a standalone new interchange project, and it was not scoring well. I was working with NCDOT to look at that one, and they said, no, don't submit that.
well, I'm asking, because I mean, with the widening of 85, is there anything that we should be thinking about or forecasting out, that, knowing that this road potentially could be built and need that access to 85?
I mean, we've kind of looked at something similar with not an actual interchange, but there's the Lineberger Connector project in Gastonia that would be a grade separated crossing of 85. So we were talking to them about how do we work with the things, we don't, we do have on the CTP, there is a proposed interchange. But working with a widening project on the bridge, I mean, at this point, they've told us unless it's a funded project, there's nothing really to do at this point, but.
Okay, since it's on the CTP, again, they wouldn't put anything in its way that would impede it in the future, an exchange, knowing that the potential is there for it to be built. I mean, does that kind of...
I don't know if I can answer that.
Well, we're saying-
I
It's
don't-
a DOT question.
That's a
That's a
DOT
DOT
question?
question.
Okay. We need to talk to them, because, I mean, that would be important to reserve that area, if we
So
can.
when any funded project is going through like preliminary engineering, they're looking at not only other funded projects, but they are looking at what's on our, not so much CTP, they're looking at our MTP, which the Metropolitan Transportation Plan is a 30-year horizon that's fiscally constrained. those projects have been modeled in the Metrolina regional model, so they're picking up any of those projects. If it's not in our MTP as a funded project, it's not really on their radar. And I don't know if that's one that's in our fiscally constrained plan or not, I'd have to look. I don't know.
Let's fiscally constrain it then.
So we'll be starting our 2050 MTP update this coming year. So, I mean, we'll be re-looking at all those projects.
Okay. All right, well,
Then, if you would give us an update on the Catawba Crossings feasibility study. Please.
So quickly, we do have funding for a feasibility study for the Catawba Crossings project, which would be a boulevard facility from NC 279 or South New Hope Road all the way over to 485 in Mecklenburg County. So we were able to receive SPR funding. I don't recall the exact breakdowns, but essentially it gives us $450,000 to hire a consultant. So we went through the state's procurement process, and we received, I believe, 6 proposals, and we selected one firm, and we are currently going through negotiations with scope and fees. Scope and fees are coming back more than $450,000. The first estimate came back at, I believe it was $700,000. They believe they can get that down to $600,000. But we are looking at things that we're potentially needing to drop from the scope. Thinking through kind of condensing some meetings, what the public outreach looks like. So we're currently kind of going back and forth. I'll be submitting some additional comments either by the end of the day tomorrow or early Monday, because we've either got to get that fee down to the 450, or I'm going to have to come back to the local funding partners, which is Gastonia, Gaston County, Cramerton, and Belmont, to request some additional funding. So we're trying to work on that fee to reduce it. We're also going to be reaching back out to DOT to see if they've got any additional funding that they can give us. So all those things that we are doing. Was hoping to have all of this ironed out so that we could come to the local funding partners for interlocal agreements for that local match. I was hoping to do that by the end of January, early February. We'll see if we can kind of negotiate those fees. If we can't negotiate the fees, the next step would be, do we go to that next consultant that was on the list to try the process all over again and to negotiate those fees. I do have some major concerns with the fees that are coming in for the public outreach piece that I've expressed to the consultant. They're looking at hiring a sub to do a lot of the work, and the fee that's coming back from them is like $123,000. I know they do really good work. I'm not questioning that, but I'm questioning the fee. So we're kind of thinking through, especially if the consultants that the prime and the main sub could do the outreach. We've got to figure that out. And it's a local firm. It's the Lowerly agency. So trying to think through.
So the city's contribution to this study is, I believe it's right at $1,400, $1,413 or something.
That sounds right.
Which was a per capita breakdown of the funding. So, and I guess that's based on the $450,000 study.
That's right.
So if it goes up, then our contribution conceivably would go up.
Either, yeah, if we received additional federal funding, then yes, the local match would go up, or if we had to just go to the local communities for additional funding. So, or we say we're unable to negotiate the fees and we go to the next one. So, but that's what we're currently working on. We have a 10-person kind of consultant selection team that's working. So we've got, that project spans 2 MPOs. It's our MPO, it's Charlotte's MPO. We have 2 divisions of NCDOT, Division 12 for us and Division 10 for Charlotte's side. We have Charlotte DOT, the funding partners, NCDOT, Transportation Planning Division. So all of these negotiations are something that I receive information from the consultant, and then I push it out to all of the 10 steering committee members, because I've said a project of this scale, I wasn't making any decisions alone. So it takes a little longer to come to a consensus, but you know, this isn't something, this is going to be a highly visible project that we need to get right. So I don't mind spending more time on the front end to make sure that it's going to be correctly executed. Now, I've also made sure too, because the funding that we received was for FY '20. And so, you know, that ends at the end of June. So I have gotten confirmation that this funding, because it's SPR, it's like a separate grant from our other funding, that it can carry over. The agreement with DOT is that it can carry over. We have 3 years to complete the study. So again, that gives us time. My deadline, though, I want to make sure that we have this ready to potentially submit the project for funding in P7. So that's kind of the deadline that I'm working off of. And they're looking for it to be, once we get started, it could be about an 18-month study.
And this study was requested by DOT in order to advance the project, to see if it's even needed.
That's right. We had looked at submitting the project in P5, so 2 years ago. And we were requesting an NC route number for the project so that it would score in the regional tier. Because it's a very expensive project. It's not going to score well enough in the division tier. There's just not enough money. In order for it to compete in the regional tier, we need an NC route number. In order to receive an NC route number, they told us we needed to go through this process for the feasibility study to show that it warrants an NC route number. So luckily, we were able to secure 90% of the funding through state and federal funds. Because again, it was a, you know, $450,000 study that, if divided among the funding partners, that'd be a huge hit. I don't think would have happened. So very fortunate that we were able to secure the federal funding.
So is this looking at like the traffic need for the bridge?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. It's looking at impacts to adjacent intersections, roadways. It's looking at the crossing location. It's looking at cross-section. Is it a boulevard? I mean, that's what it is in our plans. It's not, the Garden Parkway was a freeway. We've amended our plans. This would be a boulevard. So it's different than the Garden Parkway. Not a toll facility. So, and with the River District coming online, things have changed since the original study for the Garden Parkway. So yeah, it would look at a variety of things. It would have a big public outreach component as well.
Okay. What's the significance between a boulevard and a freeway, just for?
So a freeway is more like I-85, or
Right.
321 is like you're heading out of Gaston County, where it's limited access. You can only access at ramps.
Okay.
A boulevard would be, you know, driveways to commercial developments and stuff could access a boulevard.
Okay. Okay.
Let me ask you, guys, I remember DOT, when it was the Parkway, the DOT did a study on it, and the study came back that it wasn't necessary because of traffic counts. Was that because it was a freeway and it needed higher traffic counts to be justified? Do you remember that?
I think that was like years ago, maybe, when they were looking at the crossing, and they were comparing it to I-85 because that's a similar facility.
Yeah, and they said the counts weren't justified for the road.
Well, it was that, and Our plan at the time showed it as a freeway. Charlotte's plan showed it as a boulevard, so they weren't matching, and there were some things that needed to be cleaned up years ago to make sure that it even matched, so that the project we were submitting followed the two MPO plans. But yeah, they were looking at the traffic. They're looking at the traffic on the I-85, but then I think when we were looking at it as a boulevard, they were only looking at the traffic counts on 74.
Yeah.
Because that's a similar facility, and we were saying this is going to impact 85 as well. So we were trying to work to get them to include the traffic counts on 85. So that might be.
Yeah, okay, so reducing it down to a boulevard is going to help the process because you're not being pegged to 85 as a comparison.
Well, we want them to still look at 85 as a comparison because it's going to take some of the traffic off of 85. So we want that in the benefits of the project. So they're going to be looking at all of that.
Okay.
Does it consider just current conditions, or does it look at future conditions at all?
It does consider, we will be using the 2045 projections through the model. So the Metrolina Regional Travel Demand Model goes out right now to 2045. So they'll be looking at those future traffic counts as part of this. So they'll do like a no build. If we don't do anything, this is what it's going to look like in 2045. And then if we do different scenarios out to 2045 is what they'll be looking at
Okay.
as the horizon year.
Okay, so is that everything?
That's everything.
Okay. All right, so we stand adjourned?
We are adjourned.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Randy.
Great, thank you.
I know you guys love your work and love being here, but I assume you eat dinner as well, right? Get you guys out of here.
Thank you.
Randy, that state law on matching funds, how do you identify that? I'm curious to look at that.
It's the bonus allocation.
Bonus allocation, okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.